Here are just a couple more law of sign problems in case it helps you. That's your law of signs right there. Sine of A over A equals sine of B over B equals sine of C over C. The capital letters are the angles. The little letters are the sides. If you ever have a choice in the future of whether to use a law of sines or law of cosines, it's easy to tell. If you have an angle with its opposite side, I call that a friendship. If you have that friendship right there with an angle in its opposite side, that's when you're allowed to use the law of sines. If you don't have that relationship or you can't easily obtain that relationship, then you got to use something called a law of cosines, which we'll learn in the next section. All right, but the law of sines, so once I have that match right there, once I have that friendship with the angle on the opposite side, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go sine of 135 over 45. You just do the sine of that angle over the opposite side, and I'm going to put equals, and it looks like since I have this angle, I'm going to call this little b over here, and I'm going to set that up as the sine of 10 over that little b. And then you're just going to cross multiply, okay? So we're going to take this times this, so I'll have b times the sine of 135 equals this times this, so that'll give us 45 sine of 10. And then you're supposed to solve this for the b, so we're going to divide both sides by that sine of 135, because this is b times the sine of 135. So we're going to divide both sides by the sine of 135. Those will cancel out, and I'll have b equals 45 times the sine of 10 divided by the sine of 135. And then that we're going to plug into the calculator. Now, this problem is from the 14.1 worksheet. It says rounded to the nearest hundredth, but the quiz and homework that I have you do online is going to say everything's rounding to the nearest tenth. And so I'd rather just have you practice that worksheet rounded to the nearest tenth as well. Okay, so then when you just plug these into the calculator, now it's a little bit difficult to see it on here. Try and get that a little bit. See if I can get light going. There we go. You're just going to go for it. Your calculator should be in degree mode, and then just plug it in exactly the way you see it there. So you're going to go 45 times the sine of 10, close that angle, and then divide it by the sine of 135 degrees. And that's going to give me 11.05. Now, since I have 11.05, if I round that to the nearest tenth, that b is going to be 11.1. So I got that one. And then also what I probably should have done right away at the beginning here, it's real easy to find angle A. Angle A is, once you know two of the angles of that triangle, you're just going to subtract from 180. So that's just going to be 180 minus the 135 minus the 10. And that's going to give us angle A. That's just going to, I'm just going to tell you, that's going to be 35 degrees right there. So when you do your homework online, when you do your quiz online, we're going to have like blanks for angle A, blanks for little b, and you just make sure you plug that into the right spot. Be careful with your rounding and your calculator work there, and then you'll be good. All right, and then what I'm going to figure out now, since I know that this angle right now is 35 degrees, and all I got to do is figure out that little a, and then I'm done with this thing, I'm going to do another law of sine problems here. So I'm going to try and squeeze that in right here. So this time, I'm typically will just use what I'm given, because if you use the 10 and the 11.1, the 11.1 is a rounded answer. So you got to use what you're given, or unless you can use that 35, and that's like an exact angle there. So I can set this up as still the sine of 135 over 45 equals the sine of 35 over little a. And then when I cross multiply, I'll get sine of 135 times the a. I'll put the a out in front typically there. So I'll go this times this equals this times this. So that's 45 times the sine of 35. And then we'll divide both sides by that sine of 135. And then you just plug that into the calculator. So we'll go 45 sine of 35, close that angle, and then divide it by the sine of 135. And it's going to give us 36.5 if I round that to the nearest tenth. If you want to round the worksheet to the nearest hundredth, that's fine. But just when you're doing that quiz, we have it set at the nearest tenth there. So I don't want you missing easy points there just because you're not clear on the rounding there. All right, got to make sure that's right or wrong on the online stuff. Now, I just want to mention, if I were to give you a situation like this, where you don't have the angle on this opposite side. So here I have the angles. I don't have that opposite side. I don't have that opposite side. So I don't want you thinking right away that you can't use the law of sines, because if you know two of the angles, if I go 180 minus 100 minus 130, that's 130. So 180 minus 130, I can easily get that this is 50-degree angle right there. And then boom, I have the angle with this opposite side. So I can set this up right away. I can go sine of 50 over 5 equals the sine of 30 over A, which is also going to equal the sine of 100 over the B. And then you could just pick a proportion and just cross multiply right there. But if you can easily obtain that angle by subtracting from 180, go ahead and do that and use the law of sines. And then what we'll see in the future is if I give you all three sides, I give you this is 3, this is 10, and this is 7, and you don't know any of the angles to have that friendship completed, to have that match, you know, then you're not going to be able to use the law of sines on that. We got to use something called a law of cosine. All right, so, and I want to mention too, the IU final gives us some weird letters and stuff sometimes. And so what we have in the worksheet is some weird letters sometimes. But if you see alpha, beta, and gamma, that's like your A, B, and C. If you want to switch those, that's fine. I don't care about that. But just know that's just like an A and B, and then that's like a C. They use those for the angles. Those who use the little a and the little b and the little c to represent the sides there. So as I'm looking at number 6, let's just do one more there. If I'm looking at number 6 on the 14.1 worksheet, it gives me a couple of angles, and it also tells me what one of the sides is. It tells me C is equal to 2.68 there, okay? So when I set up a triangle, I always like to set up a triangle here. So I got alpha, beta, so I'm gonna call this alpha, beta, gamma, or if you want to just call that A, B, and C. Like I said, it doesn't really matter right there, okay? But this is 102.4. And then this one, they're telling us that's the C, which is 54.6. And then the little c is this 2.68 right here. Okay, so then we're going to need to find the angle B. I'm going to do that first. So I'm going to go on the calculator. I'm going to say, okay, angle B is going to be 180 minus the 102.4 minus the 54.6. All right, so if we do that, we're going to go 180 minus 102.4 minus 54.6, all in the calculator. It's going to give us angle B is a nice answer of 23 degrees. So we got this angle right here is 23. And then we just need to find the little b and the little a. All right, so you typically, the only relationship you know is that the angle C with this opposite side. So that's going to be like our key to this problem. So I'm going to set up my first one. I'm going to go to sine of 54.6 over that little c, which is 2.68. And I'm going to set that equal to, it doesn't matter which one you pick. You could go sine of 102.4 over A, or set it equal to the sine of 23 over B. We're going to do both of them, so it doesn't matter which one you pick with first there. But I'll go the sine of 102.4 over the little a. And then we're going to cross multiply. Now, another little trick, when you cross multiply, you can use this if you want, or you could just cross multiply. When I'm trying to solve for this letter, here's another little shortcut where you can go straight to like this part of it if you're interested. But what you could do is you could multiply the completed diagonal together, like I did there. And then what you do is just divide it by the one that you have left over. Now, if you do that with the extra step in there, perfectly fine, but you're going to eventually arrive at that same thing right there. And then you just plug this into the calculator. Okay, so we got 2.68 times the sine of 102.4, and we're going to divide it by the sine of 54.6. And then I'm going to get a 3.21 or a 3.2. So nearest tenth, I go 3.2 for the little a. And then we're going to do another little proportion here. We're going to go sine of the 54.6 over the 2.68 again, equals the sine of that B angle, which is the 23 degrees, over the little b. And I'm going to do a little shortcut here. So when you cross multiply, what you could do is you could multiply the completed diagonal together and then divide it by the one that you have left over. And I'm going to plug that into the calculator. So go 2.68 times the sine of 23 this time, close that angle, and then divide it by the sine of 54.6. It equals, and I'm going to get 1.28, which is if I go to the nearest hundredth like the worksheet, that'd be 1.28, but the nearest tenth like the quiz and the online buzz homework, that's going to be 1.3 to the nearest tenth there. And then there'll be answer blanks for those. Just make sure you round properly, make sure you do the calculator properly. I gave you plenty of time for this quiz, so you can go ahead and rework that a couple of times if you need to. You see those problems go pretty quick once you practice so many of them. And then the last thing I want to mention, two things I want to mention here is on something like number 5 on that 14.1 worksheet, occasionally you'll get no solution for these things. There's also a special case out there where you can get 2 possible triangles. We just don't have to worry about that for this year. But when I give you like something like this, what you eventually run into on this, on number 5, whenever you want to find that angle, what you'll do is you'll do in the calculator, the sine inverse of that right there. Like I'll just take that and I'll plug that whole thing into the calculator. And what's going to happen on this one is it's going to give you an error for that angle right there. And then that means it's going to be no solution, because if you actually do this in the calculator, you get 1.13. And remember, your sine graph and your cosine graph, it just forever fluctuates in between 1 and a -1. So your sine is never equal to 1.13. It never gets up there like your parent sine graph there, okay? So if you ever get a sine problem and that thing is equal to something bigger than 1 or smaller than -1, that's going to be no solution right there. So that's the reason why, in case you were wondering on that one. But typically, I'll do if it's like a number smaller than 1, like 0.7 something. When I do the sine inverse of that in the calculator, it'll give me an answer that's that's an actual angle right there. So we should be able to find it. But anytime you don't know the angle, do the sine inverse of whatever that stuff is right there, and just be careful with how you're plugging that in. And then the last thing I want to mention is just one area problem, right? So the one area format, I think we did this in the past, and then you have another area format when we do the law of cosines in the future. But if I give you a triangle, if we know this is 3 and this is 7, and I tell you that this is 70 degrees. So if you know the 2 sides of that included angle, the area formula is you just go 1/2 times one side times the other side times the sine of that included angle. And then we could just plug that into the actual calculator. So I'm going to go 1/2 or 0.5 you can use. And I'm going to go times 3 times 7 times the sine of that included angle there. So sine of 70 degrees, and my calculator is in degree mode. And that's going to give me 9.8677. So if I'm rounding this to the nearest tenth, like they'll have me do on the actual quiz, I want to make that 9.9, and then we're done. Frosted Flakes.